can't get caught in that trap of paralysis by analysis in building your brand. And it's going to change anyway. So just start somewhere, get it going.
That's it, man. That's the totally way to do it. Like, just go, improvise, figure it out, and then that's the way to do it.
Yeah, it's going to evolve. It will evolve.
Yep.
If it doesn't evolve, then somehow you have started the unicorn of brands where it's just perfect from the get-go, no hiccups, and you're rolling in cash.
Yep.
And you find me that person, I'll put them under contract too.
Heard. Heard.
Yeah, but Mark, thanks for joining Blue Sky Program, episode number 2. Woo!
Great to be here, man. It is an absolute honor, Richard.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I feel like I've known you forever, even though we've only really just become acquainted this past year through other business dealings. But the premise of Blue Sky is it's kind of an offshoot of my company, Parabolic. Parabolic has a core offering that's called Blue Sky Programs, and really what that is, it's a very free form kind of offering where I'm telling people if you have just a what if you have a great idea, if you have a new product, if you have just some kind of mysterious kind of thing that is maybe a little bit nebulous in your mind right now, but you want to talk it through and you want someone to jump in this mix with you, then let's talk about it. I'm happy to jump on that innovation bandwagon and give you my perspectives. I'm no expert by any means, but I'm willing to get my hands dirty. And so um, that inspired this podcast, which is it's created for innovators, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, people with limitless attitudes, people who have overcome challenges. They have reached the peak, and now they're on the summit of that mountain they've just climbed, and they're looking out on this vast blue horizon, and they know they can do it over and over again, and nothing is going to stop them. And so I've sought out people of like mind, and you were top of the list. I reached out to you a couple months ago, I think, to get you booted up for this, and here we are. And I'm happy to have you. You are an inspiration. How you have rebooted and pivoted your own brand coming out of the corporate world, and now you're kicking off. I don't even know what you call it at this point. I know that the URL is Defense by Holden, but does that still stick true?
It does still stick true. The intent is to focus on the defense and aerospace sector. However, as you mentioned in the beginning of this call, it's few successful entrepreneurs pivot, and gosh, the last couple months have been a pivot. But let me say, man, it is just an honor to be here. Yes, we've only kind of been acquaintances for just probably the better half of this year, but as you know, when we kind of met at the tail end of my time in corporate America, and you were this wonderful sage, this guide that was there to help me just get under my own 2 feet when it came time for me to transition. So I know the social proof of your services is real. The help that you can lend to budding entrepreneurs is real. I'm excited to one, be a consumer of your content, and two, also be a contributor here. So I'm stoked for the show. I'm stoked to be able to connect with you, connect with the community that you're building here, and discuss some of the unique challenges of operating in our size business and our size sector.
I appreciate that, Mark. And you're a good liar too. Thanks for all of those accolades.
Thanks,
So
one.
now I'll take them. I'll take them. One of the common themes I think both of us are treading across right now is um, overcoming this sense of vulnerability. Um, as you know, here we are in a podcast, right? I never thought I'd be doing something like this. And in my previous life in the world, I had to tread so lightly with the kind of external image that I would present because I'm representing someone else's money, someone else's brand identity. And so I had to proceed with extreme caution on putting my true form out there. Um, I suspect that you have come across this kind of situation as well. I had one I posted about just this morning. I caught wind that there's this circle of people out there, and I don't want to get into any details on that, and nor do I really care. I don't lend it too much space in my mind, but it was an interesting little speed bump as I'm just kind of starting to push the throttle. And, there's this circle of people that seem to be stuck in their own little litter box, pissing on their paws and scratching the turds under their feet. And they just want to sit there and they want to pull people into their litter box where it's stinky and it's confined and they can't climb and be their true form. And they would rather put energy on hoping for my failure so that I can get right back in that litter box with them. And my message is I'm beyond that. I've walked away from a couple of friendships this year, what I thought were friendships, but it's a new era. And this is my true form. This is my honest self. And if you've conducted business with me in the past, I'm very candid and very fluid, and I can cuss like a sailor many times, but I'm no longer hiding behind someone else's brand identity. This is mine. And so vulnerability to me is extremely important because it helps to um, number one, express some credibility to my contacts. Look, I'm a real person. I'm not some shill, and this is not some sales pitch just to get into your pocketbook. This is me, and my brand identity is me. And if we are conversing like this, you're you're closer to me already, and we don't even have to be under contract because we are like-minded, and this is how we um, conduct business on a daily basis. So, your thoughts on anything that you've encountered similarly?
Yeah, man. As we kind of talked about a little bit briefly this morning, haters gonna hate. And while misery loves company, no one loves misery. And so people like bringing company towards it. And I every day encounter those hecklers, the haters, whether it's it's a direct message on YouTube or LinkedIn, or it's like a comment on YouTube. And as I'm diving into YouTube, it just gets pretty savage in the comment section there. But I'll tell you what, like when I was originally kind of rationalizing this jump into social media, and for those who don't know, like I come from a pretty deep special operations background working for the government. I never, ever imagined I would ever be on social media. I do not have a Facebook account. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on Instagram. And I've only been on LinkedIn for, better part of actively on LinkedIn for the better part of 10, 11 months now. And, really, when I started to get myself out, and I'm sure we'll talk about the reasons for why, but I knew that there was going to be hecklers, there was going to be haters, there was going to be people who were not supportive of what I was doing. And initially, I was going to use them for motivation, right? My intent was to take them and be like, all right, I'm going to show you just what I'm capable of. Like, just
Yeah.
watch me, right? And while that energy it's powerful, it's useful, it's great to help achieve escape velocity, what I found myself realizing is I don't have fucking time for them. I have zero
Yeah.
time for them.
It's
And
not
and
sustainable.
you got it, man. And just being able to like even just rationalizing their behavior, rationalizing their comments, rationalizing their irrational behavior sometimes is just too much energy for me to put towards that. And so like they're there, and I'll be real, man. Like for those who know my content well, you know that sometimes in my content, I omit things and I specifically get things wrong because I now realize that I want people to come into the comment section and start correcting me. And like that now I realize that those type of people are a completely different force. Like I want those people in my comment section. Now I want those people to engage in my content because they provide so much to the conversation. And I know the community that I'm building here on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and throughout the industry, like they come in to support me. And when you go out on your own and as you're experiencing, you start to get some of the hecklers in the audience, you really start to separate the chaff from the ones who are like your champion in your corner cheering you on, man. And it becomes pretty evident when people start to get a little cagey, like they're getting towards you, man. So I hear you, I feel you, and I just kind of ignore them. Over.
Love it. Love it. And it's the supporters that's what it's really about.
Sure it is.
That's what the energy is for.
Yeah, no way I could be doing what I'm doing. We could be doing what we're doing without a robust community supporting us. And as creators, as consultants, there's a couple of masters we have to serve, right? So you and I both run a professional services firm. We've got clients that expect us to retort grand conjecture on the market and lead them to the promised land, help go find the gold in the hills. But at the same time, we're fostering a community online. We're fostering a community on LinkedIn, YouTube, like throughout this podcast that you're building right now. Like you will build a blue sky community, and you will have a couple of different masters to serve. And the trick is just making sure they complement each other. And I think that's exactly what you're building. I'm so excited for you with Parabolic. I'm so excited for what you're building here with this program here in the community. And I think they complement each other so well that instead, like the hecklers are just they're just going to be white noise to you because you'll have so many supporters in your corner that are really just there to make sure that you and the rest of your community in turn is successful.
I appreciate that. And the essential nature of having these interconnected platforms, the blue skies and the parabolics, and how they feed into each other, it's analogous to my business philosophy. It's one of systems theory. It's the interconnectedness of every moving part or unmoving part within that business. And that business is more like an organism than it is an actual firm or company or something of that nature. It's an ecosystem in and of itself. Uh, you can call to the kind of the cliches out there, like the butterfly effect and chaos theory and all of that, but um, it it is the most minute action or inaction in the most remote, furthest corner of that ecosystem that can have untelling, invisible, but effectual ripples throughout the entire being. So that's how I approach business. Very inclusive of the network within that business, that network of connections who are breathing human beings with emotions and feelings. And so my approach is a very holistic one, not it's holistic with a W, but the all encompassed breathing mechanism that is alive and constantly evolving. And that's true for the business, that's true for the connected businesses, and that's true for our networks, I believe. I've been very taken back this week in a positive way by some of the outpouring from supporters and from some connections of connections that just had to make that introduction.
Yeah.
I just joined a networking group this week. I'm very excited about, and I'll likely have one or more of those connections on this podcast at some point. But that's my approach. I appreciate your appreciation of it. And I hope that as this grows, so will everyone connected to it, because that's the real purpose.
Yeah.
Eventually, what this format will turn into is fractional podcasting. And so I'll reach out to the Mark Holdens of the world and I'll say, hey, Mark, I understand you don't have your own podcast today, but would you like to come on to be a guest host and pull your network in, and you can chat with them, freeform with them. And now I've created a platform for you who maybe doesn't want to do it full time, which is analogous to my services as a parabolic fractional chief development officer. You don't want a full-time, high stakes um, uh, equity player on your chief bench, but you do need that expertise at least for short-term kind of engagement. I'm your person, right? So that's the approach. Um, what is your approach? As I've seen you move from kind of the grind of consultation to now almost this brand ambassador status I see you building, and it's really fun to watch. And by the way, production quality of your content is it's getting masterful. I'm very jealous, envious. I'm going to copy many things that you do, but you know, that's where we are.
Yeah. I invite you and anybody else, copy what I do, steal my network, steal my moves. It ain't proprietary. There's only one me. There's only one you. Be you, right? So,
I'm
yeah,
just joking.
no, but it's real, right? I take a lot of inspiration from other content creators that I've looked up to over the years, and I certainly have a little bit of their sprinkle in mine. So I shamelessly steal a couple of things from other content creators. Certainly tricks of the trade. Certainly a lot of camera work from some of the folks. But yeah, as you mentioned, so I transitioned out. I was a product leader for some of the larger defense companies and that were running some pretty high growth portfolios, and having come out into my own, selling my time to private equity, venture capital, hedge fund managers, that kind of stuff was really just a very easy avenue for me, and started doing it, got really busy, raised my rates, got really busy, raised my rates again, got really busy, and then realized that yes, I was making the money I wanted to make as a solopreneur by the hour. I was charging what I was wanting to charge, but it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't enriching. Yes, I was helping other people achieve their dreams, which is cool, but I looked and gosh, I got a lot more years in the workforce, and it's just not sustainable to me. So I still do professional services, still do consulting on the side, but as a product leader, what I had the opportunity to do was work with everything from new product development to product launch planning to product marketing to content marketing to some of the highest orders of technology for are things like artificial intelligence, optionally kinetic smart missiles, drones, and things like this. And when I transitioned out of the corporate workforce where I was doing everything as head of product for a $16 billion defense company, I then realized that I had the opportunity to conduct a very important exercise, and that was the ikigai, and that's the trying to define your meaning of life. And essentially, you take 4 buckets and you start listing things. You have 4 buckets. You list things you're good at, things that people will pay you for, things that you love, and things that your world needs. And what you really quickly realize that there's a big difference between the things that you're good at, the things that people pay you for, and the things that the world needs and the things that you love. And it really it's a stark difference between things like a vocation and a job or a career. And I realized I had a job, a career, I really didn't have a vocation. And so then after polarizing to service to others and realizing that there was a whole lot to love to give, I realized I took a book out of the PRC who used TikTok to control the attention economy of the United States. And I said, well, gosh, let me get some of that, because it is not oil. It is not Bitcoin. It is not lithium. It is attention, is the most valuable currency in the world. It's certainly the most valuable currency online, attention. And so I realized being able to broker an attention was something that I had the opportunity to do. Yes, a lot of busy creators out there. LinkedIn's was a pretty even playing field. YouTube was just very red ocean. And I realized that while I needed to pick one platform to launch off of back in December of last year, when I realized I needed to go off and start being a creator and start posting every day on social media, I chose LinkedIn. Chose LinkedIn, one, because that was the only social media program I had, and two, because gosh, man, people on Instagram, they got dreams, but no money. People on LinkedIn have jobs. And that's what I started realizing. And that's where 100%, 95% of my business comes in through LinkedIn. The other 5% comes from me knocking on the door of companies saying, I am irrationally excited about your product. And gosh, we got to work together somehow. And then we do some business together. And so, yeah, so I came out of the gate, just posting content and realizing that there was this big defense and aerospace community that was budding and in this weird, like odd, tumultuous change stage, because we were drawn down in Afghanistan, like GWAT was over, counterinsurgency's dead. We're focused on the great power competition. Venture capital and private equity at the time was getting like really hard to get. And, you know, a lot of my community comes from venture capital and private equity backed communities. And so I realized that I had the opportunity as a product leader in the industry to just share my insights on a daily basis. And I did not know where that would go. And I, like you, believe in entropy, and entropy being the only universal constant in this world is change. And I knew that my technique and my content would change over time. So my first couple of posts were a little cringy. And after a bit, I just posted every day, kept consistent, learned from my mistakes, evaluated the things, and realized that I kind of enjoyed this content thing. And so very quickly that got me into working with some of the brands that I love, right? Just irrationally excited about Bell Helicopters, Danner Boots, like just started working like Darman Company. Just like there are companies out there that I just like have adored for years. And now as a content marketer have the opportunity to like knock on their door and say, hey, let's do some work together, or meet with them at trade shows and start help cover product launches and things like that. And that very quickly got me down this like content marketing route. And, you know, I'm in this really awkward teenager stage in my business where I'm transitioning from like, you know, because, you know, man, you come out of the gate and you're like, I can do everything. Hire me for everything. And then if you do everything, you do nothing. But what you really quickly realize is that the riches lie in the niches. And so for me, being able to niche down into defense and aerospace, niche down into high orders of technology, both hardware and software, you know, I had a pretty even playing field too. There was one thing that I really realized that was missing from the community. And there was a lot of smart people that knew how to solve some of the hard problems, but they did not know how to rationalize that against the operational landscape. And I was very fortunate to have served in military and a career supporting the global war on terrorism before I was able to jump into this, you know, this corporate life of mine. And, you know, being able to draw from my operational experience certainly comes through my content today. And so I appreciate the kind words, but the secret is that the community probably sees content that's maybe 3 months old. Like I'm always working on new things, continually refining them, testing them on different side platforms with different users, A/B testing before I launch to things like YouTube or LinkedIn. And so like, stay tuned. I got so much more coming, but you know, in that awkward teenager stage, like I am now at that point where I'm working with some great brands, conducting some great product marketing shoots. You know, we do things like taking great videos of products on sizzle reels, integrating products into a large combined shoot where we do things like conducting mock operation with a whole bunch of products and then tell a story through that. A lot of what I do is in the shadows, though. I'm not very overt with the brands that I work with unless the brands are wanting me to be overt. And there are some brands that I work with that just want me to be overt with us working together. But I'm having a good time doing it. I'm learning a lot along the way. And I'll be real, man, I'm so excited for the next couple of months because that's where I start to get into my own. You know, and on the side, been working on things like newsletters and podcasts and communities, working on some great organic content for YouTube. I've been just like ham on shorts lately and just getting into it. So, man, I've been having a lot of fun doing it. I've realized that if you chase the things that you love, people will certainly support you along the way. And if you can figure out how to monetize that in any way, shape, or form while giving back to your community, it's just this magical thing. So I'm chasing that, but I'm polarizing initially to supporting all of those individuals who are doing great work in the defense and aerospace. And I do that through professional services, but primarily through the content that I produce on a regular basis. Over.
I love your approach. I like the 5% approach where you're just knocking on the door saying, I emphatically love you. It's I call that guerrilla marketing.
Yep.
Because they don't see it coming. You sent me a clip just right before this.
Yep.
Is that something that I'd be able to cut into this podcast?
Yeah, go for it. You cut into that. That's just go for it. Yeah.
I can cut into that. Okay,
Yep.
Cool. All right, man. What was that? I love it.
That's the kind of stuff we do. And here's the thing that'll blow your mind, right? So I want you to put your helmet on because while I shoot everything with like beautiful cinematography grade 8K cameras, the clip you just saw was taken from my iPhone.
Really?
Really? Yep.
Is
So
that, let's
what
see,
I
is this,
do, right? So the real shoot was taken with beautiful 8K cinematography grade cameras, but what I do with my cinematographer is I make sure that I hand him my phone and we do a rough cut with a cell phone prior to going live on the cutting room floor so I can start to distribute that and start testing that. So what you got was a iPhone 15 Pro, right? That was a quick remake after we shot the
yep,
cinematography grade stuff. And so what you realize there is that there's so much you can do as an independent creator with the phone in your pocket. And that's why I do some of that stuff, right? I have one cut that is just this beautiful, full blown, like a gajillion gigabytes for the teams. But then there's this like mobile only, very quick and easy, quick and dirty one. And it shows how just how easy you can be with just the phone in your pocket and some of the beautiful marketing material you can do with this phone in your pocket. But two, yeah, man. So what you're looking at is what's called a combined shoot. So let's say like there, in that shoot you saw a knife, right? Knife in my hip pocket, and then so that's from Fox USA. Fox USA says, "Hey, great, love to have you showcase a knife." Well, I'm like, "Oh man, I can spin a knife around the table and do some stuff, but wouldn't you love it if there was more stuff with it too?" And so I pick up the phone and I call Haley Strategic and I call Cry Precision and I call Staccato and I say, "Hey, you guys want to furnish some equipment? You want to do you want to get in on this marketing shoot? We've already got this thing scheduled. If you're interested, you furnish your equipment. We'll sell you the media. You can use it, whatever. And or we'll tag you in all of our stuff. And then from there, we just get a ton of brands that support these big combined shoots. So in there you've got Danner boots, you've got Cry Precision uniforms, you've got Haley Strategic chest rig, and you'll notice, and I challenge the audience here. If you ever look to my content and you say, "Why did you tape over the logo on that beautiful EOTech?" I'll give you the real reasons because they didn't pay for it. And and so for me, making sure that like working with companies that have skin in the game and that like know that they're getting marketed is really important. So yes, there's a facet of like stone souping a marketing shoot for this stuff. But what's really cool is you can do one shoot, cover, in this case, like 7 or 8 clients at once, and just focus on something badass, and then ensuring that you've got this great collaborative kind of community that, hey, every time we're doing a shoot, we're going to give you guys a call if we need an optic, we need a weapon system, we need uniforms, and they'll either furnish it, which reduces my cost to my customers, which is great. It helps kind of subsidize some of those shoots and keeps the costs way down. And two, it just makes it more authentic. One thing that's really important to me is authenticity in the work that I provide. It's really easy to look at a piece of content and be like, "Ooh, you've never held a weapon before, have you?" Right? Or you've never put that uniform on or something like that. While I'm not perfect in my shoe because it's been a while since I've been in my gunfights, but I really enjoy authenticity, providing high quality gear. And I only like I try to work with brands that I know, but I know their value prop. So I, as a creator, when I'm deeply in storyboarding mode with the organizations and the brands that I'm working with, we're making sure we have the opportunity to storyboard something that's highly compelling for today and tomorrow's problems. So we try to create some just high quality evergreen content. Stay tuned. In this winter, we're putting together an Arctic shoot, and I am so excited. It's going to be so cool. So cool.
nice, nice. Pivot left for a second. You brought up something. Let's talk about the the iPhone, and I'm assuming that maybe that was cinematic mode or something of that nature, but whichever mode you used in this iPhone has now replaced the need for a professional videographer for this particular use case. It's something that I discussed with a colleague earlier this week from the perspective of AI
Mm.
and some of the fears, uh, particularly in my generation, kind of the older crowd, who some of whom maybe are still using Windows 95 in their daily lives, and there's this growing apprehension with the emergence of artificial intelligence, or at least its form these days in the large language models and such, that um, one, it's the tool in and of itself is going to replace people out there, which obviously I can see that happening. But um, the fearful approach is that um, this person who can't even spell AI is going to get left behind, and so there's this movement of upskilling to learn what AI is and such. And the the conversation evolved from one of AI being a skill set to one of AI just being a tool in the tool belt. And yes, there's a skill set around it, but really it's the innovative attitude on knowing what out there is a tool to put in the tool belt. Number one, how to identify that opportunity, um, and then um, motivate oneself to actually be proactive and use these things as tools. So, what are your thoughts on how technology and the evolutionary nature of it that's happening as we speak? Um, what are your thoughts on how that is evolving the market landscape, in particular for entrepreneurs and perhaps aging gray hairs like myself?
I'd say for budding entrepreneurs, it levels the playing field significantly. And I speak specifically about primarily things like large language models. To be abundantly clear, I've worked some of the larger artificial intelligence portfolios where we put things like AI dogfighting behavior into F-16, right? That's a very complex piece of artificial intelligence. Large language models are a tool in the tool belt, and I believe that they are the tide that raises all boats, right? So if you are that gray-haired individual that just like cannot spend time typing, you're hunting and pecking on the typing board, and you're like, how am I able to get this giant task done when these kids are running circles around me because they can type a gajillion words per minute? It's like, just teach ChatGPT to do it for you, and your playing field is leveled. The age old, I say age old now because GPT's been around for a hot minute, but it's been around for enough time for us to realize that the AI won't leave people behind. The people who get left behind are the people who are not leveraging AI, not leveraging artificial intelligence. It saves me so much time in editing. So I use for all my majority of my shorts, not my like high grade cinematography stuff, but if I take, a 1 hour podcast and I'll distill it into a series of shorts and I'll put it on YouTube, right? AI does all that editing for me. It does the subtitle generation. It determines when to cut the video. And it is a huge force multiplier for me because I do spend money on cinematographers and editors, and I've got those folks on staff, and it's like that's what I need to support this business. But I'm able to free them up. So like my high grade cinematographer who running around with like an 8K camera is not sitting around cutting dinky little shorts that I made at home, right? It allows me to free that individual up to focus on some of the content that you're seeing now. But it is such a huge force multiplier. Like it is fire. It is the thing that will like give our humanity the ability to scale itself like in different ways, right? This is not the cure all. This like I very quickly get bored with large language models sometimes, but in turn, it's like you either get warmed by this fire and embrace this new destructive power that can be used for good and cooking food, or you just say, nah, it's too dangerous, I'm good. And then next winter you're gonna be really, really cold. Um,
It's
people
like it frees you up to actually provide quality
yep,
over the quantity of work that
yep.
we're just so used to. You can actually now, for example, your videographer, you can free them up to actually do what they should be doing, which is videography, uh, at face value. So that's very interesting take.
Yeah, it's the best employee I ever had.
Yeah. And Chat GPT, for those who don't know, is there is a free version out there, and you'll see a lot of these applications out there. They have the free versions they're releasing, and a lot of it's because it's in beta. They're learning, and we're the new emerging market for this kind of technology.
Yep. Oh, and just a quick PSA to those content creators that just copy and paste off of GPT without many edits. We
Oh,
know, we see you. It's cringy. When you use, like, at least when I use these type of tools, large language models, ChatGPT, and yes, I pay for like four. It's for like brainstorming ideas. It's for like brainstorming hooks. It's for, like it's for making things shorter, but there's a lot of proofreading and changing and editing that goes into it before it ever hits the socials. But there are those folks that it just like copy and paste straight out of GPT, and it's like that worked the first week, but no, not anymore. We see it and it's cringy.
So one thing that you posted the other day that I absolutely loved, it bridges vulnerability to the love of your craft, is you simply sat at this airstrip and you filmed aircraft taking off and landing. It was like watching the ocean. It's something I've never done. I've heard of people doing it, but as I sat there and just got into the vibe with you on this post, I could I could get it. I could dig it. But what is it to Mark Holden that is so satisfying about sitting there at the airstrip watching someone else fly a plane?
Yeah, man. So I come from a long line of aviators. Grandfather was a bomber pilot in World War II. My dad, very successful consultant, owned a small corporate airline on the side. So by the time I was 6, I was learning to run radios and radars in my dad's planes. By the time I was 12, I was logging pilot and command time. By the time I went to go test for the driver's license exam in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I was already licensed and certified to fly, my own airplanes, right? It was flying planes before I was driving. And so for me, I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I grew up. Like that was my life when I was a kid. It was airplanes, airplanes, airplanes. Like I would skip school in high school to go fly. I would do the things that any 16-year-old with his own single engine airplane in the sky would do. Like it's the equivalent of having a car. Like for me, aviation was this is my first love. And for me, I want to be a fighter pilot, man. And when it came time to figure out which 4-year institution I was going to hang my hat on to get myself into a military cockpit, because I knew I was going to join the military, global war on terrorism kicked off. And there was no way in hell I was sitting 4 years in a college institution to wait, because as far as I knew, the war was going to be over. And so I enlisted instead, realizing that, yeah, I could bring aviation back into my life if I ever wanted to, and I had enough money and time as an older individual. Like aviation is not going away for me. There's a need, and that need is war. And so I went off to it and get after it. And the most fun I had, and some of the most the most like the top experience I have is like has airplanes in it. It's like jumping out of airplanes, riding on airplanes and helicopters. It's like, and then it's like calling in all the airstrikes we were calling in for GWAT. And it was, for me, it was like having our own personal air shows. And so when throughout my adult life, I've just, every time there's a plane, I've looked up. Everyone I was, as a kid, it was the same thing. I looked up, and, every time I have the chance to just sit on the approach end of a runway, civilian or military or not, and just kind of watch the planes come in is, for me, it's very therapeutic, but it's exciting for me. Like there's a level of like chills I get in excitement. It is very different than the Blue Mind for me. The Blue Mind sitting at the dock of the bay watching the tide do its thing on either coasts. Like that's real. Blue Mind is real. But for me, watching these airplanes take off, one, connects me back to my inner child, because there's a lot of inner child in Mark that still needs to come out. It connects me to my legacy with my family, who I adore deeply, respect deeply. It connects me to my nation that has these incredible weapons of war, right? These beautiful, majestic airplanes that just conquer all challenges. And it's nice, like I reminisce, right? So in that video, we had awesome airplanes. We had F-22, F-16, A-10, F-35, like, and it was like every time they flew out, I was like, oh man, I remember the time where F-18 did it. I remember the time A-10, and it was just nice to reminisce with the platforms, like the old friends in the sky that, as an individual on the ground, especially in some of the earlier days of Afghanistan, where like those things bailed you out. For me, like there's always a level of like giving that I have to give to those airplanes, because they help bail me out. And so if I can sit there and observe and celebrate them, post them online so others can celebrate them too, I'm there. But it is deeply emotional for me to watch these things in so many ways. Think about my family. I think about me as a kid. Think about lost dreams. I think about, the times they bailed me out. So like just sitting on the approach end of a runway, man, it is this like deeply emotional experience where I generally like being alone when I do it. And it's cool because I'll have like a airband transceiver where I'll be able to hear the pilots do their thing. And, my airband transceiver is able to transmit, even though I don't. Sometimes I'm just like cheering as these guys are doing it, man. So I appreciate that you saw that there was more to that story, because there was more than just airplanes taking off and landing. To me, it's this deeply emotional, spiritual experience watching these things do their thing. And I'm stoked to continue like just fostering my love of aviation, getting into a jet someday, like definitely on the list. And just, there's a reason that I work so deeply with a lot of aerospace companies. One, because I'm just inherently knowledgeable about their products. But two, I'm an av geek at heart, aviation geek at heart. I'm a huge stark supporter of the defense industrial base's aerospace component. The defense industrial base needs all the support and visibility we can get right now. And so that's why and that's why airplanes, man. Over.
First off, thanks for your service.
You were worth it.
Appreciated. Let's talk about your transition out of the service.
Yep.
It's a common theme these days, and at least in my circle, I hear a lot about it. And I'll be interviewing a gentleman later this week, specifically to this subject, because it's something that he talks about often. But when you're at the flight line and you're taken back to that era of your life, I don't want to get specific to what you did in the service, but just in speaking to the passion that you still have, because I've seen this go both ways, where you have a very passionate service member, and then the transition itself can kill that passion, and their sense of loyalty wanes following that transition. So rewinding back to when you were in and about to get out, how was that process? And after having gone through it and entering the corporate world, how is it that you still hang on to such passion and duty to be an evangelist for the Department of Defense and its common threads?
Yeah. Let me answer the second part first. I'm still serving.
No.
I'm still on duty, right? My work in the defense industrial base is a direct extension of my service, right? It's the evolution of it. And I realized things that I take solitude and solace in is that I am way more combat effective to the fight, creating technology, or now helping those create technology that helps our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Space Force Guardians become more highly effective in their jobs so they can come back safe and save lives and livelihoods, reduce organic tissue damage on the battlefield and all that stuff. Like for me, I'm way more effective in an industry than I am as a single gun on the battlefield, right? That's what I realize. And that's the solace I take, and that's what kind of keeps me there. But my transition was, so for those who don't know, I had the distinct opportunity of working both as an active duty individual in the U.S. military. I've done the operational shadow contractor thing, and I've been fortunate enough to be just an individual employed by the U.S. government conducting counterterrorism operations across the globe. And having seen like the life of a government employee and the shadow contractor thing and the veteran thing, it was really easy for me. When I got out of the Navy's got this thing called a sea shore timer rotation. So if you spend too much time deployed, you have to sit at shore for like a couple of years before they can kick you back out again. So I had done a couple of deployments. We did Afghanistan, we had Africa, Afghanistan again. I was like just warming up, and I had just spent too much time abroad. And the Navy said, "Oh, well, now you got to go to a schoolhouse. Like you'll go teach for a couple of years." And I was like, no, that ain't for me. If you can't get me back into the box, I'll go find somebody who will. And so I left the Navy. I just pointed myself to the East Coast. I drove to, the DC metro area and screamed as loud as I could to anybody that would hear me, that I'm ready to go back. And very quickly, someone said, "All right, let's see what you got." And, after a pretty lengthy selection program, got back into it again. And then just, that's when I got real, I'll call it a little bit selfish. Call a spade a spade, right? I was single, I had certainly my parents and siblings and things like that loved me and knew me, but, I would go off and spend just a year on my own, right? Getting after it overseas, sometimes more. And when that went really well, I got a nice, found myself in a windowed office, with a higher pay grade and more money. And I realized that wasn't for me either. And so I took another opportunity to go support another unit that was looking to grab people with my subject matter expertise. And I went right back into it again. And so I continued and continued and continued. And it wasn't until like a very particularly very shitty deployment that I realized that some massive changes in my life needed to get made, or like, I ain't coming back from this one. So, I very quickly made those changes that included like moving away from the Northern Virginia area where I was living. Like, we relocated to Washington, D.C. I commuted as an employee for, a good 7-8 months before I transitioned off into industry. For me, I don't know if I wouldn't call it a failed transition, because I enjoyed my time in the military. I used it as a springboard to get myself deeper down the rabbit hole. And for me, like, I just kept going deeper and deeper down because I wanted to continue to serve in more and more ways. And like I said, like, we know how this one ended. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing because I know I'm supporting the warfighter, supporting the zeitgeist in a very powerful way. And gosh, man, we need it. I'm seeing the drumbeat to World War III, just like everybody else. And I know we more than ever need all the support we can in the defense industrial base. So I know I'm where I belong. I know I'm where I'm here. I know I'm here. I'm here because this is where I'm most effective. And so do I miss it? Not often. Do I think fondly of it? Like, of course. Were there horrible things that happened? Like, abso-freaking-lutely. But in turn, man, I'm very proud of the work that I've done in each of the organizations that I've served. I know that I'm going to continue to serve. And for me, it's just like this will be my life. Like, I will spend my life serving the defense industrial base of this great nation, until my last breath. And I'll do that in a bunch of different ways, right? I used to do that by crossing names off the kill capture list. I do that now through creating great content and helping promote other leaders and making sure people's products are effective and profitable and things like that. But in turn, like, for me, that's still serving, man. And we need all the hands on deck. We need everybody in the boat rowing in the right direction in this industry. And that's where you come into, man. That's where your listeners come in. That's where this community that you're building here comes in, because we have some work to do coming up. So yeah, so that's my transition, man. And like I said, it's like, I feel like I'm in a state of perpetual transition sometime, because there is always a mission ahead of me. And, I think very fondly of the time I spent over.
That's certainly the echo down the hallway here in Austin. Austin being one of the hubs for several defense acquisition agencies, innovation hubs, kind of cohorted by Capital Factory, which is an amazing. I encourage anybody listening right now, look up Capital Factory in Austin. They're a startup incubator. Josh Bear is the founder. It is just an epic kind of organism out there to help startups and innovation leaders. But the acquisition teams for the DoD are somewhat embedded physically and metaphorically with Capital Factory, just based on that. For the past, since 9/11, we've been fighting one type of war, and it's surrounded by sand, and it's one type of enemy, and it's legacy technology. You can speak a lot more profoundly to what that technology is, but the sense I get is that 3 or 4 years ago, we started waking up, collaboratively waking up, saying, "Oh my God, look at what Ukraine is doing. They're pulling off-the-shelf drones from Alibaba.com, strapping grenades to them and destroying multi-millions of dollars worth of equipment. Um, we are so far behind on how we can approach our new pacing threats. What do we do? And one of the calls to action out there is pull in the startups, the tech startups, and let's try to get them under contract. And that comes with a whole litany of conversations that have caused um, paramount anxiety, I think, across the board, to speak lightly about it. But if you follow any of my content online, you'll be linked into some of those conversations. But it's it's very interesting that you mentioned that we seem to be kind of approaching World War III. I mean, what do we have going on now? The the outright publication of defense leaders in mainstream media saying we're going to war with China in the next couple of years. You've got the Ukraine Russia controversy. You've now got the southern border crisis that has begun to reveal um, it's not just Latin and Central and South Americans that are trying to cross that border. It's people from all nations, and they all seem to be fighting age men who have left their families behind, and they all seem to have very specific destinations, known destinations with unknown hosts on this side of the border. Um, then you, of course, have the recent event over in Israel, and so all of these things happening. Mark, what what are the signals to you from your perspective and your experience on the inside? And truly, let's explore that. Where do you think we're headed?
Yeah. Let's unpack this. So all this written in sand, not stone. Reserve the right to change my answer at any time. World
Of
events may
course.
change and dictate these things, but yeah, man. So you look at the superpowers that are starting to, rear their teeth right now, rear their ugly head. Russia, China, people I'm talking about. They have multi-generational, like very protracted goals. We in America have a hard time agreeing on 4-year bases, let alone 400-year bases, and that's just what our enemies do, right? Take China, for instance. In 1927, they put down the gauntlet and said, we will retake the world. China will be a world power. In order to do so, we have to do a couple of things. One, we need to grow our economy significantly. Two, we need to grow our defense industrial base significantly. Three, we need to restrict the youth in our country because they will revolt. Four, right? It just keeps on going down. They have these things. Russia, same thing. It's like some of their multi-generational goals is like creating a land bridge to their Arctic ports because right now they don't have that. And why is that important now? As well, global warming's a thing. Polar ice caps are melting. We've got more freedom of navigation into what's called the global commons, more accessibility into the global commons. This is the area underneath the seafloor. This is like the Arctic that is now being exposed because ice caps are melting. And oh, by the way, 95 or 98% of our critical communications go through underground or underwater cables throughout the Arctic. We've also got a huge resource crisis on our hands that, like, with all the resources getting made available, both with like not just that are being made available in the Arctic, but that are made available by like our ability to escape Earth's orbit. This is Mars, this is Moon, this is like asteroid mining, this is like the stuff we're heading to, right? And so, I look towards some of the big modernization programs that the United States military is really focusing on as well. New helicopters, new tanks, new airplanes, right? This is like the Booker tank. This is like the FARA and FLRAA programs. This is like the F-35 and things like that. Real big focus on things like coalition force interoperability with all of these systems, because we realize that we are now gearing up for two major fronts. Unified land operations in the European continent, just like we trained for in the 1980s, like Fulda Gap, and littoral combat in the South China Sea. And they are both very different. But right now, we're in this area of like hybrid warfare, gray zone of hybrid warfare being the actions that occur between the periods of peace and full-time war. And so, like, what are some examples of the enemy conducting things like hybrid warfare? We may see things like election meddling, and we may see things like riots and social media and things like this. But first and foremost, like TikTok, top of mind for me, TikTok, because TikTok is certainly a ploy leveraged by the People's Republic of China to diminish the youth of our nation, right? Like the TikTok in the U.S. is geared towards these stupid dances and to have as much time as possible. Like it's rife with predators. It's there just to hit that dopamine to get kids to focus on it. And you ask kids who use TikTok today, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'll tell you the exact same thing that all the other kids will say in the U.S. I want to be an influencer on TikTok. Right. But if you look at the Chinese version of TikTok, is laden with patriotic content, science, technology, engineering, math content. There's like a 40-minute cap on usage. You can't use it during the school day. They just shut the app down. Right. It's like, then you ask the kids who use TikTok in China, what do you want to be when you grew up? Astronaut, astrophysicist, mathematician, right? Just anything with science, STEM, math. Like they all want to be these like really impactful things. You also look at like the mass problem sets that we have and things like South China Sea. We as like a fighting force have so many legacy trainings that we've got to break, right? The Navy's got a hard problem in South China Sea right now because they will be outnumbered in South China Sea, right? And the US, for just be very clear, like China is not here to put aircraft carriers off the coast of like Brazil or Sao Paulo or anything like that. Like that's not their intent. Like they're not going to they want freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. And so we are power projecting to their home turf. And certainly the United States Navy is structured around this almighty carrier battle group. The carrier strike group is like the pinnacle of the United States Navy. It's that one picture of the United States naval carrier and like 50 ships around it, right? That's the carrier strike group. Well, unfortunately, the troop strength prescribes us that the carrier strike group 1 will be one giant, just massive target that's available for things like EMPs. So we realize we need to start training in a decentralized manner. This is like the destroyers operating as a single destroyer. This is the cruisers operating as a single cruiser, not part of the carrier strike group. Additionally, you look at the challenges our enemies have, right? So how are the Chinese solving this? So they don't have as many carriers, but they have islands, and these islands have surface-to-air missile sites and radars and ammo dumps and all these and places to refuel. And if you like crater a runway, they've got construction equipment that they can just break out. And so there's all these massive hybrid warfare actions and asymmetric threats and all this power projecting that's occurring. Both we're seeing it a lot in the Ukraine, we're seeing it a lot with Israel, and then some of the challenges and conflict that's going on right now. And when I look towards what we had to do as a nation to prepare for World War II, because we got very surprised. Theoretically, we got a little surprised, right? So we put some restrictions on the Japanese. They certainly had a little bit less of a warmonger penalty to hit us in Pearl Harbor, but they did. And then very shortly thereafter, Germany declared war on us, and now we're in a two-front war, right? So it happens very, very quickly. But we had a lot of people that were inside the defense industrial base that spent time bolstering our production to get us there, realizing that we need hundreds of thousands of machine guns and hundreds of thousands of tanks. We need thousands of aircraft, like a week deployed. And we were hitting that drumbeat months, years before we got brought into World War II. I see a little bit of the tea leaves now with us starting to ramp up things and starting to consolidate supply chain here in the US. Like that's super important. I think if anything we learned from COVID is that supply chains are really important when they're centralized, and decentralized supply chains, especially when they're overseas, make it really challenging when things like pandemics occur. But the same concept apply when you're at a massive war, right? The challenge we'll have too is just troop strength, man. Like I know we're talking, like the challenges we have is troop strength. One, we are, as you mentioned, like we're no longer fighting this war that we've known for 20 something years. Like we are fighting a completely different war. So not only are we hemorrhaging troops, folks that are just like, well, GWAT's over, I'm going to get out. But now we've got a lot of folks that have a hard time like getting into the military because of woke culture and all the other things that are populating the news. And so we use technology to start focusing on that. And so one of the tea leaves and some of the things that I see is a drastic uptick in technology funding. So if you look at the budget, technology funding is up like 40% year over year. And that's because it's really important to arm troops with a lot of technology so we can scale the fight, because it's tough to scale it with organic tissue unless you're doing a draft. And so, because of regional conflicts, because we're positioning some incredible power, in certain parts of the region, because like I know that China's going to make a move in the late 2020s and Russia's going to make Russia's going to make another move in the early 2030s. we as a society, as a defense industrial base, as a government, are beating the war drum slowly but surely. And we are slowly but surely getting ourselves into war footing and war production footing. I don't believe it'll be a big surprise. When we went into World War II, you had about 2/3 of the country that knew we were about to go to war and that weren't supportive of it, but knew we were doing it anyways. I think you'll have a little bit of the same here. The big ticket will be our ability to interoperate with our coalition force partners. And that's where I also see a lot of uptick. See a lot with coalition partners than we have in the past. It's so important because in the fight, speed of battle is going to move so fast that the only way we're able to overcome some of the tactical disadvantages is through interoperability of coalition forces, meaning like, a French fighter jet launching a British rocket that's called in from a German operator that's running a Polish tank, right? They all speak different languages, they're all different stuff. And so making sure we're interoperable is important. We're seeing a lot of modernization programs for there. And so there isn't just one thing that says, yeah, man, this is the reason we're going to war. I got a 7-foot whiteboard on the corner. I draw this stuff out sometimes. I don't have one reason. I have a whole lot of them. But the big things, man, is just the spidey sense. You want a new idea, read an old book. And a lot of the stuff that we saw leading up into the prior campaigns are starting to get there. I'd love to be proven wrong, but for those reasons, and to be frank, 100 more, I believe that the war drum's starting to beat around the world, and it's not an if, but when. Over.
Where can people find you? Because I know that this conversation is going to provoke some follow-ups and some questions, and there are some people who are definitely going to want to have this discussion with you. So how can you be found, and what are you offering out there currently?
Yeah, appreciate that. So you can find me on a couple places. 1, YouTube. 2, LinkedIn. So I'm Mark Holden on LinkedIn. I'm Holden Actual on YouTube. You can come to me for a couple of things. 1, you're a veteran transitioning that's just trying to figure out what life's all about. You need someone to just talk to. You just give me a call. I'm still a brother. I'm still a brother to all my brothers and sisters in the military. You're still family. I'm here to support you. 2, if you are a technology company, you have a product inside of the defense and aerospace industry, and you want to tell that story through eye-watering visuals, give me a call. I'd love to tell your story. I offer things and shoots everything down from $1,000, everything up to $100,000, and we can operate everything in between. So I'd love, if you got a cool piece of technology, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can find a storyboard. Let's see if we can find a good program that works within your budget. And I'd love to be able to tell your story through content marketing. And that's where you can find me. I'm on YouTube every single day. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. Social is kind of my job right now, and I love to continue this conversation there.
We'll obviously be tagging you in this post. Feel free to tag any of the other sponsors that you're affiliated with currently who want to be overt. And I guess, just last thing, thanks for joining, Mark. Do you want to give us the proper Holden sends on our outro?
All right. Thank you. Holden sends.
Thanks, brother. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, man. Yeah, later.
All right.